Trading Wilyer Abreu makes too much sense for the Boston Red Sox this offseason. Why? I'll tell you on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is it is all completely free. So you might as well tune in because Locked On is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Happy Tuesday and welcome to the show as we wait another day for free agency to start heating up. And I feel like something very similar happened last year where there's that specific player that people are waiting to sign before the dominoes start to fall and other players then sign. Like last year, it was Ohtani. He was that big free agent that people were waiting to see where he ended up. And then once he signed with the Dodgers, then all of these other players started to sign and things got a lot busier. This year, I feel like that person is Juan Soto, and Juan Soto's market is holding up the rest of it, and other free agents won't sign until they see where Soto goes and what kind of money he gets. So I'm hoping that this week, when teams are making offers to Juan Soto, he finds one that's enticing enough, preferably in Boston, to where he says, okay, I'm going to go to the Red Sox, and calls it a day. That would very much be ideal, but we'll have to wait and see, and time will only tell. But if the Red Sox do want to make room for Juan Soto on their roster, or even just utilize their resources to create space for more areas of need like pitching, it makes too much sense for them to trade Wilyer Abreu. Abreu had a great season in Boston this year. And if you think about where he's at right now, he plays in an outfield that is absolutely stacked right now in Boston. Because you have Abreu, you have Jarren Duran, and you have Cedar Rafaela, and you had Tyler O'Neill this past season. Now, Rafaela is here to stay because the Red Sox extended him, and he does play very good, exceptional defense in both the outfield and at shortstop. He had played both positions in Boston in 2024, so Red Sox fans really got a taste of what he would be like in both. And he plays both very well, especially defensively. He needs to get going with the bat a little bit more because he put up about an average offensive season, but he was a rookie, and I suspect that he'll continue to grow and develop over time past his rookie season. So you have Rafaela, who you definitely want to hang on to, especially for his defense. Jarren Duran just does too much to justify getting rid of him. He has been so important to every aspect of the Red Sox game, from defense to offense to stealing bases, and every little part of his game becomes useful. And Duran made a difference in every single game for the Red Sox. Every game, when I was recording the podcast after, I found myself mentioning Jarren Duran in some capacity because he basically played in every game this past year. So Duran is somebody you definitely need to keep around. Then there's Tyler O'Neill, who may or may not come back. He is a free agent right now. The Red Sox could negotiate a deal with him if they wanted to, but I'm not really seeing them bring him back because I could see them wanting to get an upgrade from him in some sort of capacity. So even if you don't do that, you still have Roman Anthony, who is an outfielder and is coming up in the system very soon. He's been making waves at the minor league level, and he's somebody who is waiting in the rafters for his chance to come up to the majors and prove himself there. So with Roman Anthony, who is the top prospect in baseball right now, being a guy who the Red Sox can lean on and trust likely when he comes up and is supposed to be this very special prospect and very special player in the making, then what place would somebody like Wilyer Abreu have on this team when Roman Anthony comes up? There wouldn't really be a roster spot for him. And then in that case, what happens if it's tough for the Red Sox to trade him then because he isn't having as good of a season as he had in 2024. His value is very high right now because of the season he had for the Red Sox. Just won a Gold Glove, so that will put him high on other teams' radars because it brings attention to his defense. Offensively, he batted .253 on the year, over 399 at-bats, with 101 hits and 15 home runs. 59 runs scored and 58 RBIs. He also stole 8 bases and had an on-base percentage of .322, slugging percentage of .459, and OPS of .781. So he put up a really solid stat line offensively. And Abreu was always one of those guys that you were excited to have up at the plate in a big moment because he was one of those guys that was able to come through in a lot of those situations for the Red Sox. So he was definitely a pleasure to watch. And his defensive skill set being solidified with that award at the end of the season will only make him more desirable for the future for other teams. So the point that I am making is they are going to have to move an outfielder at some point, whether that's right now or whether that's Roman Anthony comes up. And why not trade an outfielder right now who had a very solid freshman year in the league, if you want to say, in Wilyer Abreu, who went out there and just impressed in a lot of different areas, because this is when his value is high enough to where a team would be willing to trade for him and give up some solid pitching in return. This is the offseason where you want to move somebody around because all of those outfielders had a good year. And the reason I'm saying Abreu makes the most sense is because he's not tied down to this long-term contract with the Red Sox that some other team would have to swallow if they trade for him. And he also isn't as diverse of a player as Jarren Duran, in that Duran has more speed and can steal bases and be a threat to opposing pitchers in that regard. I love Abreu as a player, and I know it's going to be hard for Red Sox fans to swallow parting ways with him. But the reality is, yes, somebody's going to have to go when it comes down to it at the end of the day, especially if they were to bring in Juan Soto, like I mentioned before. Then Juan Soto is obviously this miraculous offensive piece that you're adding to the lineup. You still need a right-handed bat, but that right-handed bat could come in the infield instead of coming in the outfield. And then if you do add Soto, he would likely be an everyday outfielder. So then what do? Move Rafaela to shortstop and Trevor Story to second base, and then it blocks the way for Christian Campbell, who is a really high-end prospect in the Red Sox system. Or it creates a sense of a mix-up for Story when he just got back to playing shortstop after an injury and then has to go to second base. Or then there's Vaughn Grissom who's here, and what does he do? So that kind of throws some things off as well. So if they move Wilyer Abreu this offseason, it creates some space in the outfield, and also it allows for the Red Sox to get some top-notch pitching in return, because I don't think anybody can disagree that pitching is the number one need for this Boston Red Sox team this offseason. I'm pretty sure that's a universal concept and understanding that Red Sox Nation has as a whole. They need pitching. And in order to get pitching, they might have to execute some trades because, yes, there are some good free agent pitchers on the market, but they need multiple arms. They need at least one solid starter who is a defined ace, but I would even take 2 starters. Plus, they need to revamp their bullpen and bring some guys in that way. So I think we do see some trades for pitching, and I think it makes a lot of sense for Abreu to be that guy in the outfield that the Red Sox trade because they have an overload of outfielders right now. You're not getting rid of a Duran, who is a huge difference maker in all of the different assets that he brings to the game. And you're clearing the way for potentially really good pitchers to come in because other teams are going to see what Abreu brought to the table in 2024 that really need an outfielder, and he's young, so they can have a lot of time to continue to develop him and get him when he's at his best. So there are a lot of reasons why trading Wilyer Abreu this offseason makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens and we see him as that primary name on a trade and he gets packaged in with a couple other players to get some solid pitching. That would be a good move in my book because by trading Abreu, you are leaving out the least bit of full value that a player brings. In other words, you are getting rid of the outfielder that ultimately in the long run will provide the least to your team. Whereas if you traded Duran, you're losing a lot of different factors as that consistent leadoff hitter. So got to trade an outfielder. Abreu makes the most sense to trade, and I think that applies whether they get Juan Soto or not, because later on in the show, I'm going to be talking about another outfield candidate that the Red Sox could possibly pursue this offseason. So if they want to continue to look for outfielders, got to move somebody and take advantage now of where Abreu is at, because you don't know what he's going to be in 2025. And if he goes into 2025 and he's not performing as well, then the Red Sox might have trouble finding a trade candidate for him. Then they're kind of stuck. So we'll see what happens with that and with the outfield situation. But coming up, a pitcher for the Red Sox won a special award on Monday. So you're not going to want to miss me talking about that. Love the holidays, but hate grocery shopping? Ibotta is making your Thanksgiving easier with cash back on everything you need to make your perfect holiday meal. So you can get the turkey and your favorite sides for free. This month, Ibotta is giving new users 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast. Just add the offers in the app to redeem for everything you need to make your Thanksgiving feast complete. All you have to do is shop at your favorite retailers and upload your receipt. Download the Ibotta app now and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get 100% cash back on your Thanksgiving feast starting November 1st. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. This is the best time of year to save because not only are you shopping for this big Thanksgiving meal, but then you also have to do Christmas shopping. So if you can save anywhere, this is the perfect time to do it. So head to Ibotta and utilize everything that it has to offer. If you're looking to also save money on live events like a sporting event, concert, comedy show, Game Time is the number one place for all of your ticketing needs. I use it for literally everything now. I don't get tickets to anything anymore unless it's through Game Time, because every single time I have compared it to other ticketing vendors, Game Time has been a lot cheaper, and it gives you good seats with a nice view from your seat because it shows you a picture of what your view would exactly look like, so you can make sure that it's not obstructed and that it works for you so that you don't get your tickets and find that you're not getting enough buck for the value that you paid. So Game Time absolutely is the place for all your ticketing needs, and it offers tickets to so many live events in your area. If you just look up your area within the app, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Game Time will bring you the best deals. I promise you. It'll change your life and you won't go back to any other ticketing vendor once you start using it. So make sure you take advantage of that ASAP. The Boston Red Sox are working on finalizing their roster for the 2025 season, hopefully talking to some key free agents to bring onto this team that'll hopefully help improve the team and get them back into contention for 2025, and maybe talking to some other teams about trades. I hope Craig Breslow has been as busy as we want him to be when it comes to working out deals with players. So, that being said, the Red Sox also need to do a lot of work on their pitching, but one pitcher who received some really exciting news the other day is lefty Cam Booser, who will receive the Tony Conigliaro Award for overcoming adversity. He overcame alcohol abuse, injuries, and a bicycling accident before returning this season from a career in construction to make his major league debut at almost 32 years old. And he will receive the Tony Conigliaro Award, which is always given to a player who overcomes a lot of adversity to get back on the field. He said, "To have my name in the same conversation as Tony Conigliaro is something that I will always hold close. This is truly humbling." The award, named for the former Boston outfielder, honors a player who overcame adversity through the attributes of spirit, determination, and courage that were trademarks of Tony C. Others who received votes were Kansas City right-hander Lucas Erceg, Atlanta lefty Chris Sale, Oakland righty Mason Miller, Baltimore righty Albert Suarez, and Cleveland lefty Matthew Boyd. But Cam Booser ultimately did win it, and he has been through a lot, so he definitely does deserve it. Previous winners include Jim Eisenreich, Bo Jackson, and Curtis Pride, and previous Red Sox players to win the award were Brett Saberhagen, John Lester, and John Lackey. The award essentially gets voted on by a committee of Red Sox and Major League Baseball officials, media members, and a representative of the Conigliaro family. Booser retired from baseball in 2017 at 25 after battling through alcohol abuse and injuries that included a broken leg and broken vertebrae, Tommy John surgery, a torn labrum, and a broken back when he was hit by a car while riding a bicycle. He joined a carpenters union and worked construction, but resumed throwing off a mound in late 2020. He then pitched in the independent leagues in 2021, spent time in the Diamondbacks organization in 2022, and signed a minor league deal with the Red Sox last year, making 48 relief appearances for AAA Worcester in 2023. The Red Sox called him up on April 19th, and he recorded the last 3 outs of a victory in his major league debut in Pittsburgh that night. In all, he had a 3.38 ERA with 43 strikeouts and 42 2/3 innings in 43 games last season, going 15 games without allowing a run. Conigliaro was a Boston area native who made his major league debut in 1964 at 19 years old and homered in his first at-bat at Fenway Park. In his second season, he became the youngest player to lead his league in homers with 32. He reached 100 homers at 22, which was the youngest in American League history. But in 1967, he was hit in the face by a pitch that fractured his cheekbone, dislocated his jaw, and damaged his retina. After missing all of 1968, he returned to play 2 more seasons for the Red Sox before declining vision forced him to retire, which is unfortunately super heartbreaking. Conigliaro had a heart attack in 1982 and died 8 years later at the age of 45, and the award has been presented every year since then. His story is truly one full of heartbreak, but also represents a lot of fight and resilience and determination to get back to doing what you love most, which is playing your favorite sport. And just like Conigliaro went through obstacle after obstacle and still got back to the baseball field, so did Cam Booser. Cam Booser is very inspiring and somebody who is a good role model to younger kids who want to go on to be a professional athlete. And he portrays the message that no obstacle is too difficult to overcome. And if you know what you love and you continue to work hard to get to where you want to be, then you will be living out your dream. And for Cam Booser, it was tough for him in the second half of the season because he was super dominant in the first half of the 2024 season for the Red Sox. And like I said before, he went on this big streak of not allowing a run. And that was super impressive. And there was a good portion of the season where Booser was the Red Sox most reliable reliever. He would just go out there and he'd take care of business and he'd get the job done. And then in the second half of the season, he started to not pitch as well. And to me, a primary reason for that was because of fatigue, because the Red Sox starters in general in 2024 were simply not pitching as deep into games as they needed to in order to be successful and have the bullpen be set up for the most success. Because with the starters not being able to eat as many innings, it forced the bullpen to have to go into games a lot earlier than they would have liked to. And as a result of that, they ended up having to be overused and pitching more innings because the starters couldn't go that deep. And Cam Booser was one of those pitchers who was being overworked, simply. You had guys like him and Zach Kelly who were constant names that we would hear come across the screen when there was time for a pitching change. And it was tough because I kept saying these guys are going to get exhausted because they continue to be the ones who are used over and over and over again. And it just creates a sense of really difficult to overcome scenarios for a pitcher and feeling like their arm is getting super fatigued and they might not see the results that they wanted to see. So that's what I feel like the case was with Cam Booser in the second half of the season. I didn't really see much of a downfall in his ability, and his pitching strategy seemed to still be the same. But I think when it came down to it at the end of the day, because he didn't have a bullpen behind him that was super reliable, he had to be used a lot more often than Alex Cora or anybody else would have hoped that he would have been used. So that's why this offseason, it is super apparent and important that the Red Sox go out and find some more reliable relievers, because you can't just have one or two reliable bullpen arms in your pen. You just can't have that. That is not setting a team up for any sort of success. And we saw it with the Red Sox in the second half of the season, how things just came crashing down for them because their bullpen was blowing lots of games because of the fact ultimately that a lot of these guys were fatigued and they could not keep up with the stamina that it takes. And ultimately the starters need to go deeper into games. That's why the Red Sox need to get one, ideally two starting pitchers who can really hold their own and eat innings. So that way, then it doesn't have to get to the bullpen as early in a game. But I definitely have high hopes for Booser, hoping that he'll go back to the first half Cam Booser when 2025 hits, and that he won't be the second half Booser who struggled a little bit more because of the fact that he had to be overly relied on for all these reps. But I love hearing inspirational stories, and I love how Booser, as difficult as it was for him, was able to overcome that and get back onto the baseball field, because it's a huge lesson learned that these athletes are people first. They all go through things in their outside lives, outside of their sport. And I think sometimes people tend to dehumanize them a little bit and think that they're athletes and athletes only. But they go through obstacles emotionally and physically in life too, just like the rest of us do. And how we overcome those challenges is what matters. And Booser was able to overcome those challenges and not let it completely discouraging him from playing baseball ever again. And I'm sure if he retired back when he was 25, he didn't think he would ever come back to the sport. But then after several years and several scenarios later, he missed baseball and wanted to come back and said, I'm going to give it a try. So it's a really powerful story, and he is so deserving of this award, and I'm really happy for him, and I hope other players around the league and young kids who strive to be professional athletes take his story and run with it and learn something from it, because if you know your dreams and you have an eye on those dreams, you can accomplish anything. And speaking of Red Sox players and the outfield not doing its part, the infield not doing its part, and the pitching not doing its part, or whatever other areas of the Red Sox you think went wrong in 2024, here's a player who could possibly help fix some of those problems, and I'm going to be talking about that next. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. FanDuel is a great way to make lots of money. I am telling you, if you like sports and you like making money, there's no better place to look than FanDuel. I promise you, I've seen my husband win lots of money on it firsthand by betting on a variety of different sports. So make sure that you head to FanDuel today if you want to start taking advantage of it and winning lots of money. The Boston Red Sox are in a point where they need to make big moves this offseason to get themselves back into contention. They need to make a big splash, and whatever that big splash looks like is still to be seen. But one player who has been brought up in conversation is Anthony Santander, which is an interesting name to float around there. He is an all-star silver slugger and a right-handed bat who would help balance out the Red Sox very lefty-heavy lineup. This past season with the Orioles, Santander was one of the best power hitters in the league. While his average was low, only hitting .235, he hit 44 home runs and recorded 102 RBIs. So basically, when he gets a hold of the ball, it's likely going deep and scoring multiple runs, as long as the Red Sox hopefully have people on base. So it would be a very similar contribution, I'm presuming, to what Tyler O'Neill gave us this past season, because O'Neill struck out a lot. So he didn't always provide the best quality at bats, but when he got a hold of a baseball, it went 400 feet. And that became huge for a Red Sox team that didn't have a ton of home run heavy hitters. So that's something that Santander could provide for them. So in that regard, he would be a good addition to the Red Sox, but he also does have a problem with consistency at the plate. And looking at the stats, he'll end up getting a hit about once every 4 to 5 at-bats. So yes, he can crush baseballs, but how valuable would he be to the Red Sox if he's incredibly inconsistent at the plate and can't come through in a lot of the big moments? So that's the flip side of that I'm thinking about and saying, would he really be the best fit to come on to this team? Yes, he has pros, but there are also things to be concerned about when it comes to him. Not only that, but also mentioning the fact that he's also an outfielder, which the Red Sox have plenty of, but they could move him to DH and figure out what to do with Yoshida, because I know they mentioned that they are open to trading Yoshida this winter, but they just haven't really gotten much interest there yet. So if they do end up trading Yoshida, Santander could be an outfielder who primarily plays DH. But if they don't trade Yoshida, he's going to stay in the full-time DH role, and Santander would have to play in the outfield, and then in which case they'd also have to move an outfielder, like when I talked about Abreu early on in the show. But if they do go that route and they say, okay, we want to get somebody who we could potentially move to DH, then they definitely might as well and should try to get Teoscar Hernández instead, who I believe would be a better option and would contribute more offensively. He hit 11 less home runs than Santander did this past season, but his average is 40 points higher. So from a consistency at the plate standpoint, Teoscar is the better choice. So you're basically saying, do you want more home runs or do you want a more consistent batting average type of hitter? And the other thing with Teoscar Hernández is we know he can show up in the postseason. We saw it during this past Dodgers playoff run, and he's somebody I wanted in a Red Sox uniform last winter. So he's somebody who the Red Sox should also be pursuing, especially if they don't land Juan Soto. I would prefer to get him over Santander because I just think that Teoscar could bring a little bit more to the table. And he's somebody who could seriously contribute to the Red Sox and fit in with a team that really wants to get back into contention. And he has that playoff experience and understands that atmosphere and is coming from a big market in LA. So it wouldn't really be a factor of having to worry about Boston being too big of a market for him, given that he just came from this really big market. So I think there are a lot of positives to Teoscar Hernández. Santander will likely end up costing somewhere between $90 million and $125 million over 5 years. But ultimately, at the end of the day, even though it's an interesting idea to get him, and it would check a box on their list of problems needing to be fixed, I wouldn't really see that move as the best thing they possibly could have done, because at this point, the Red Sox are in the mode of we need to go out and get the best guys at these positions that we need help with. And I don't think that Santander would be the best outfield option to bring in. I do like him as a player, but I don't think he would provide as much value as some of the other players they could bring in. So I thought it was an interesting name. I'm not completely opposed to it. Again, he provides a lot of power, which is good for the Red Sox, and they could utilize that. But he wouldn't be the first choice. So we'll see what the Red Sox do about this roster moving forward as they progress throughout the rest of the winter. But I hope you continue to keep the faith, like I always say. And also be sure to check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan, aka Sully, as your second listen. I do appreciate you tuning into my show, and he will keep you updated on all things going on across the league. You can find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure that you head to that show right after this. As always, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.